we're ready for season 2. Listeners, if you're new, welcome. If you are a returning listener, thank you for coming back. Thank you for joining us again. We are very happy to have you. New listeners, we're happy to have you as well. My name is Raph. I will be your host. I'm joined today by my good friends, Duke and Sailor. Duke is the godfather of Screen Age Wasteland, and Sailor is like, I don't even know how to describe him. I want to say he's like Screen Age
The
Wasteland's
gremlin.
like weird uncle.
Uncle Buck,
I was
yeah.
gonna take that.
Is that like
I was gonna describe myself as like a dirty orphan, just on the streets begging for anybody to read my articles. Just like, please, sir, can I get a click? Can I get a click?
Oliver List. That's who you are, Sailor.
Oliver List.
Duke and Sailor, I don't know if you guys ever watch Always Sunny, or listeners, I don't know if you guys ever watch Always Sunny. But they do a great episode where they do the breakdown of the gang, and they're like, every crew in the history of TV and movies has this same breakdown. You got the brains, the muscle, the looks, the useless chick, and the wild card. If you're doing group dynamics of Screen Age Wasteland, Sailor is 100% the wild card. Duke is the brains.
Oh, thank you.
Sailor's the wild card, and the rest of us sort of fill in the rest.
In my life.
the only it's always sunny clip that I've seen is where, I don't know, maybe that's the same episode, Raph, is where they're like pretending to do Seinfeld and like 3 of them are Jerry.
That's a different episode, but that is one of the funniest clips where they just remake the scene from what's that episode from the competition?
The competition, yeah.
Yeah.
3 of them
Good
are
stuff.
Jerry.
It's great. They're all wearing the same shirt and like they have the fake mullet.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about Seinfeld. We're not here to talk about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We are kicking off season 2 with a wonderful movie, because all the movies that we talk about here at the Canon are wonderful. But today is a super special one. I think it's our first comedy film. We're kicking off season 2 with 2 great satires, and the first one that you're hearing, or I guess maybe the second one if you listen to the other one first. But either way, this episode here right now that you're listening to, Blazing Saddles.
It's appropriate for Duke to be on this because I don't know if you guys know this, but the original plan was Mel Brooks wanted John Wayne to play the wacko kid, the Duke himself.
Oh, there we go.
I heard about
I did
that.
not know that.
He loved the script, but he turned it down for obvious reasons. He didn't want his image to be tarnished.
It didn't fit with his vibe, for sure.
It sure didn't.
And we'll probably get into the other bit of famous casting trivia about this movie. But before we talk about the movie, before we get into, everything going on with Blazing Saddles and all that stuff, because we're coming back from a hiatus, we took the summer off to regroup and, like we were saying earlier, come out, stronger and better in season 2. We should probably do a little bit of catch up. How have your guys' summers been? What's going on? What's new? Anything good? Any good news out of Dukeland or Sailorville?
It's hot. It's hot.
Yeah, it's hot as hell. The Earth is dying.
It's hot.
How hot is it in Canada?
Well,
because you're going to give me
40
numbers
Celsius.
and then I'm going to hit you. Hit us with a Fahrenheit. Man, what are we doing with the Celsius bullshit?
I go off Celsius. It makes sense.
Oh, yeah, because you're wrong. Well, I live, as many people know, in Arizona, where it is 120 on a cool day, and that is not an exaggeration. I'm dying.
Yeah, it's like unsafe to go outside during the day if you're not in the shade.
It really is. It really is.
It's like legit not safe.
Horrible.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been, just clinging to life every single day.
Yeah, haven't been doing too much either, besides sweating and trying to stay cool. Raph, what about you?
I I got to travel a little bit, which was cool.
Okay.
But other than that, it's been a lot of trying to stay cool. I don't do much in terms of leaving my house. I have a system in place. I work from home, but I have a system in place where I don't really leave. I don't go outside between the hours of like 9 a.m. and 8 p.m. I don't like to be outside during the sun hours because I'm in New York and it's way hotter here than it has like ever been in the summer. But unlike Sailor's Arizona heat, which is a dry heat, we have humidity here. And
Yeah.
if you try to go outside in New York humidity for more than like 10 minutes, I've always described it as trying to like cut through a jungle with a machete. Like that's how it feels walking through Midtown Manhattan. You need like a full machete to cut through the humidity. It is so bad. You will be absolutely soaking within 10 minutes of being outside. It's miserable. And then the train platforms, there's no AC there. So you're just like, God forbid you miss a train and then you're sitting there for like 10 minutes. You're just standing in a pool of your own sweat. And then you get on the subway and the AC is way too high. And then you're uncomfortable there. And then you got to get off and then you walk around outside more. And it's still, it's awful.
Every single day
It's
for
terrible.
you is do the right thing.
Yeah,
the
man.
entire movie could be summed up by like, is it racial or is it just everyone's so fucking hot? I hate you.
Yeah, I think it's
And I
more a
get it.
movie
When
about
you're
how the heat just drives everyone crazy.
I mean, it is a factor. Like everyone in that movie is hot. It is a plot point
Yeah.
in that movie. When temperatures rise, wink, wink. You get what I'm saying? Shit goes down. But yeah, I get it. When you're this hot, and I lived in Oklahoma for 2 years, so as hot as it is here, and 120 degrees feels like you're in an oven. I will take that over 75 degrees and humidity that's, like you said, cutting through. It's horrible. Horrible.
Yeah.
Humidity is so much
It's
worse
terrible.
than just dry heat.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know what's worse, 95 and insanely humid or 120 plus degrees where if you go outside, you just get like immediate skin cancer. But I don't think anyone came here to listen to us complain about how the earth is melting. You know, maybe people do want that. They want to come here to hear us talk about a great movie. They want a distraction from all of the anxieties that are tied up in thinking about climate change. People just want to sit
It is
back
appropriate. It's called Blazing
and hear some dudes.
Saddles.
I mean, it's just blazing. The heat is just blazing outside.
It comes to me when it comes to me. So,
Rob, you can just edit those clips around to make it sound good.
We'll work it out.
Movie magic.
Yeah. So yeah, Blazing Saddles, where the Mel Brooks classic, where
we're going to try not to cancel ourselves quoting the movie.
Yeah. Okay. So before we get into it, I promise you we're about to get into it. We are going to try to avoid uttering the phrase "this movie couldn't be made today." Let's all just say it like 5 times right now so that we don't say it at all during the conversation. 1, 2, 3, go. This couldn't get made today. This movie couldn't get made today. This movie cannot be made today. This movie cannot be made today. This movie cannot be made today.
Say, I didn't hear you say that once.
Cannot.
I can't be promised to do anything, and I'm afraid if we all summon like some sort of cancel demon, like Beetlejuice, I just don't.
The ghost of
you
Richard
have to
Pryor.
address it up front because one, it's such an obvious statement for a movie like this. I heard Tarantino on an interview when he was promoting his book, Cinema Speculation, and they were talking about movies and they were talking about how movies wouldn't get made today, and he said he hates that phrase because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you're in that mindset, then yeah, it's never going to get made. But I think the one movie that's the exception to that rule, except for pornos that would play on like 83rd Street in New York and shit, would be this movie. This movie would not get made today. When we maybe 10 years ago, but even movies that were not that long ago are getting canceled retroactively, like Tropic Thunder. No one had a problem with the portrayal of blackface in that movie at the time. Everyone got it was a joke. And then now Twitter's like, oh my God.
And who it was a joke about.
Exactly. And then, but now like Twitter's like incensed. And I'm like, no. You don't get to jump on the cancel train now. There are movies you can cancel if you choose to, like Breakfast at Tiffany's. Every time Mickey Rourke shows up on screen, it's a hate crime. Cancel that. You don't cancel a movie that knows what it's doing. That's the joke. Blazing Saddles, it is the joke. Richard Pryor wrote this movie, co-wrote this movie. You can't cancel a movie that Richard Pryor wrote. He's one of the most edgy comedians at the time, right? So the landscape has just changed so much today, and it's part of it is because of. I mean, we can get into why everyone wants to cancel everything all the time. I don't know. I think people are just.
I don't think we should.
Yeah,
I don't think we should at all. I think Sailor, I think you got enough of the it can't get made today conversation, or you got enough of that itch out of you. So I think we just leave it at that. We got it out of the way, and now we move on and we talk about the movie, because I think, like you said, the self-fulfilling prophecy. I just don't think it's a necessary conversation to have. I think it sort of ignores it ignores like the point of this movie, and it ignores our responsibility as audience members in terms of like how we're having conversation with the movie and how the movie is having a dialogue with us. And something that I told you guys before we started recording, and a through line that I really want to shine through this season and seasons going forward of the canon, is I really want us to think about the central question of like, why is this movie that we're talking about essential? What is it about this movie that a group of writers for Screen Age Wasteland sat down and decided to vote this as one of the most essential movies ever made? And I think something that we talked about it a little bit in season 1 with some movies, but it's not always just like, well, because it broke the rules in terms of like the language of cinema and the kinds of movies that you're going to make. But like, some of these movies are like important historical texts, and Blazing Saddles is one of those movies, even though it's a silly comedy that ends with like a scrap that bleeds onto a studio lot and breaks the fourth wall so much that the characters end up in the movie's current year watching the movie that they're in a movie theater. Like it is like that ridiculous, but it is also an extremely like seminal movie in the history of American cinema.
Well, actually, Raph, that's interesting, because I was talking to an uncle of mine the other day about going on this pod to talk about Blazing Saddles, and he said something that was kind of interesting from his background. He's done communications. He's kind of a local comedian, and he was saying that Blazing Saddles was kind of the first film, to kind of portray, well, at least in his opinion, kind of like these dumb main characters. Like he's saying, without Blazing Saddles, we might not have got Steve Martin's The Jerk, or even recenter movies like Happy Gilmore. And I don't know what to do with that. I don't know if you or Sailor maybe have, if you agree with that statement, or that Blazing Saddles was kind of revolutionary in that sense.
I mean, it definitely ushers in like a new phase of that. I feel like there are probably examples of older, even like sitcoms and stuff, where that's just kind of like the setup of comedy, right? Where you have like a dumb person and like sort of like a a smarter person who's like playing on the idiocy of the other person, or that's like one form of comedy that is like constant throughout. But I think that this is like certainly like a watershed moment in terms of like modern comedies and how they're sort of understood, maybe not structured, but like definitely in how they're presented to us. I think maybe a question that I have for you guys is the Mel Brooks question. Like, Mel Brooks is considered one of the greatest comedic voices in, film and TV of the last 50 years. Like, would you guys consider this the definitive Mel Brooks movie? Would you consider it more of like a breakout film for him? How do you guys see Blazing Saddles in that sense? And Duke, I'll throw it to you first.
Oh, well, I mean, Blazing Saddles is definitely better than his later works like Robin Hood, Men in Tights, and I mean, I don't even like Spaceballs that much.
You threw it to the
Blazing Saddles is
definitely
definitely
wrong one, Raph. You threw it to the wrong one.
Sailor would definitely know more. I mean, personally, I think, Blazing Saddles probably would be his breakthrough film, in my opinion. I mean, he did Get Smart first. He created Get Smart, which is, a huge, iconic TV series, and then he kind of broke through it on film, I think, in a big way with Blazing Saddles. And then Young Frankenstein was either the same year, I think.
It was the same year. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, I don't know, did he ever reach that peak again? I don't know, Sailor. What do you think?
Well, you can't. He is among a handful of directors, and I mean a handful of directors, to release two masterpieces in the same year. And I would put Spielberg as the only other person to have two better masterpieces with Schindler's List and Jurassic Park above Blazing
Still the most
Saddles.
insane thing to ever be done.
It's only because the effects took so long on Jurassic Park. That's why it got bumped to the next year. But yeah, Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year. But then you also have Steven Soderbergh having Traffic and Aaron Brockovich, where he was nominated against himself. One of the few, that's even, I think, the only time that's ever happened.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts.
Spielberg wasn't nominated for Best Director for Jurassic Park. So yeah, I think Soderbergh was the only one where he had to go up against himself, and he lost to himself. You have Blazing
It would have been crazy if he lost to someone else.
It's happened. When there's been 3 nominations and one person is nominated twice and he still loses, I'm like, fucking just don't even show up, my guy. You have Blazing Saddles on one hand, which, if you just removed the language of the movie, still would be a seminal comedy. I do think it's that language that tips it over Young Frankenstein. I think Young Frankenstein's one of the best parodies. Not even, I guess you can call it a parody. I don't, because it's such a loving homage to Frankenstein. You cannot parody something you hate, clearly. And I think that's part of the reason why, to me, Spaceballs, like Duke said, it's not one of my favorites of his. I do like it, but you can tell that Star Wars is not one of his loves. You can tell he loves Frankenstein. He loves that movie. Because it's that movie. It's the plot of the first, all 3 of them, including Son of Frankenstein, just mushed into one movie. And if you remove the jokes from that, it would still work as a movie. But it's the structure of the jokes that puts it over the top. But Blazing Saddles is better than all of his other movies, and he has a lot of good movies because of that language. He never had a writing partner before or since as good as Richard Pryor. And the thing is, Mel Brooks is a comedy legend on the same level as Richard Pryor. I mean, once he dies, like, that's it. That's the end of the old guard. So once we lose that, we lose our connection to that old piece of comedy history. But few movies before and many movies since have tackled language. It opened up the door for a language between the races, which I think the best the best example of which would be Chappelle's Show to me, which is examining
without Blazing
stereotypes.
Saddles, you don't get something like Chappelle's Show. You don't get which then means like you don't get Key and Peele, which means you don't Get Out. You know, like there are a lot of like great comedic bits that you don't get if Blazing Saddles like doesn't exist.
Exactly. And I mean, you could even go. You could even fork
not
off
even
and
like
say
comedy,
South
like
Park.
but like you might not get like.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen Bamboozled, the Spike Lee movie, which is not necessarily a comedy, but like it revolves around a premise that is so absurd that it like in moments is pretty funny. But a movie like that, and like you could maybe even argue like Do the Right Thing. Like you don't get Spike Lee's career without Blazing Saddles, which feels like a weird sentence to say out loud, but there is a way that someone could make the argument that there is like a through line between all of these things.
I agree with that, but to me, why I bounce off of many Spike Lee movies is he uses race to. Every time Mel Brooks used race in a movie, he always pointed it inwards to himself. No one made fun of Jews harder than Mel Brooks. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Spike Lee uses that as race as examining targets that need to be taken down. And it works. It's effective. I think Do the Right Thing is a masterpiece. But a lot of that time, it just feels like him on a sandbox. Or soapbox, rather. He didn't really get far.
I like the idea of a sandbox.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. I think Sailor, you brought this up before, and I feel like it's a little bit of an elephant in the room. Let's talk about the Richard Pryor of it all. Duke, I'm sure you can walk us through the bit of trivia about Richard Pryor and this movie. But if you can't, just tell us your thoughts about like Richard Pryor as a comedian and sort of like what he's bringing to the table in this movie in particular.
Well, I believe Richard Pryor was the original choice, or he kind of wrote Bart for himself, I think. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know the reason why he didn't play, whether he just opted not to, or if there's complications. But
apparently Brooks didn't want, or maybe it wasn't Brooks's decision, maybe it was like the studio, but
the studio
essentially it was decided to not go with Pryor because he was just like such a controversial figure in like the public eye because of his
it's interesting. It's funny because me and Sailor were talking about sorry.
No, it was just like his drug use and stuff. Like they're like, we don't know if this guy is like super bankable as a movie star due to all of that stuff. So
that's the reason they use
co-writing.
Well, that's the other reason they use is that he wasn't a bankable enough star. That's the reason they use. I think they was just afraid of he was too controversial. But that was
bankable star like the
white hot fucking career of Cleavon Little.
Yeah, who was like he was like a pretty respected like stage and like TV actor, but he wasn't like a movie star. And even after this movie, he didn't have like a big time movie career. So like bankable.
He's great in this.
He's absolutely wonderful in this, but bankability like clearly wasn't like the question.
Yeah, it's a flimsy excuse because again, Cleavon Little. No offense to Cleavon Little, but
again, he's wonderful in this. And you know what, guys? Can I tell you something? I've been
You're related.
I've been not patiently waiting. I've been very impatient. No. Is that racist? I've been very impatient to introduce this to you guys, but
hey, where are the white women at?
We got a soundboard. We got a soundboard.
Where the white women at? That's one of the best lines in that movie.
It's one of the best lines,
Hey,
period.
where are the white women at?
It's an all-time quote. So I originally I didn't have that quote on the soundboard, but then I was watching the movie and I was like, wait, this is way too iconic of a line to not have. So I waited a while to whip it out, but I will be whipping it out a few more times throughout the course of this episode.
Okay.
Another one of the best jokes in the movie.
None but quotes. This movie.
There's a good line that I liked is when Gene Wilder is waking up and he handcuffs them, blah, blah, blah. They're talking and Bart goes, well, since you're my guest, what do you like to do? And he goes, well, play chess, screw. And then Bart's like, let's play chess first.
What did you scour Blazing Saddles quotes for one you can actually say? Because I feel like that would. You're like, I
had to think for a second because there's a lot of good ones where it's like, oh man, I don't want to be substituting words to be able to say it.
Yeah, so don't even.
Don't even. But I think I was telling Raph before we started the recording that I think the first 10 minutes from when the movie begins till Bart hits whatever the guy on the back of the head with the shovel after he gets out of the sand trap, I think that's just hilarious. Like there's never a dull moment. You're just laughing throughout that whole thing. Every line is just one-upping the last one.
What do you think is the funniest thing about this movie? Is it the quotable lines? Is it the setup? Is it the structure? Is it something else? Is it just like the performances? Sailor, if you had to pick like one of those things, what would it be?
I would have to say the tone. The tone of the movie, because it is always funny. The lines are always great. There's a million great scenes that we, like you just said, the quicksand or the pie fight or any number of the end which is ridiculous. But it's because that tone is inviting. It's always cartoonish. Like there's never a time where it dips into the serious, which I think works. You really, because this is the time that, I mean, if this came out a couple of years earlier, then yeah, this would have been a much different movie because Robert Downey Sr. made kind of a Western parody with Greaser's Palace, which it's a radically different tone. It's not like this. I mean, it's not heavy on the usage of the language, but I don't think it works as well because you never know. I'm like, is this a joke you're making, or are you trying to tell me a message? And in this movie, you are always aware of the joke. I mean, yes, where are the white women at? You see the KKK, and then on the backs, have a nice day. You know, so you always get the joke. You always understand. Even if we're dealing with serious subject matter, using language which is so hard that it should repel anybody because nobody wants to hear the language that's in this movie, but you get the joke. You understand what they're saying. They're making fun of the language. They're bringing everyone in because it's not just, oh, let's make fun of this group. Everyone has their own foibles. Let's make fun of ourselves. Everyone's included, except okay.
Yeah,
I was gonna bounce off that joke with the punchline of the joke, but I can't even say it because you're gonna
I think tone is a great shout, and like the whole thing being super silly, it sort of makes sense for the underlying thesis of the movie that racism is silly. And if you ever stop to have serious moments within the movie, then you're like lending credibility to the seriousness of racism as opposed to just telling us like and showing us how silly it is. So like if the whole movie is silly and is ridiculous, then we walk away thinking like, oh yeah, racism is absurd. It's as absurd as our supporting actor, breaking the fourth wall to tell us that he's going to be nominated for an Academy Award for supporting acting. Like if you just stick to that silliness, then the message like totally comes across. I think that's a great shout, Sailor. Duke, I don't know if you can top it in terms of what you think is what you think like makes this movie so funny. Is it the lines? Is it the setup? Is it something else?
Lines are definitely a big part of it. I think even just going off of maybe what Sailor's comment, I could maybe build on that. Is earlier we were talking about, people are trying, people try to cancel Tropic Thunder nowadays for its blackface because, I think a lot of that people don't even watch the movie. They just see Robert De Niro in blackface and immediately want to try to cancel him. But I think, with Tropic Thunder, there are more serious moments. There is more of an action vibe, and the comedy, I would argue, is second. It depends how you want to look at it. Where Blazing Saddles, you never doubt that, this isn't just everything's being made a joke. You would never doubt that, Mel Brooks is actually, has something against, or Richard Pryor has something against black people or Jewish people. Everybody's getting a fair crack, so it's just something that, it's across the board. They make fun of everything. They make fun of directors. When they break through and they're in Warner Brothers' lot, they're making fun of everybody at that point, including Warner Brothers. And yeah, Hedley Lamar gets a joke in there, or Hetty. I don't even know which one's which at this point. Hedley, yeah.
It's also
what are you talking about? It's 1836. You can sue her or something, whatever that quote is.
Apparently, she ended up suing for the use of her name in this movie.
I think I read that.
Which is like
ping pong paddles. White people, dumb white people with their bimbo secretaries are getting a few jabs pointed at them. So
yeah, I mean,
I'm
gonna push back a little bit because I don't think that the movie is like necessarily like making fun of everyone. I think it is really just making fun of how silly racism as like a concept is, and all of these silly things happening under the roof of whatever Blazing Saddles is just like furthering that point. I think one of the most interesting pieces of this movie, which is like something that on face value is like pretty offensive, but when you like take a moment to kind of think about just like the layers of nuance and just like reflection of societies and how it sees different people, but like Mel Brooks showing up in redface as the chief and then speaking Yiddish to the black family and letting them go because the black family is darker than Native Americans and therefore like must have it worse, when like Native Americans have probably experienced racism worse than like any group in this world, but it's being played by a Jewish man who like, you could also make the argument that Jewish people have experienced racism worse than anyone in this world. And it's just like, wait a minute, like all of these things and all of these people and all of these groups, like we're all super connected. So like, why the hell is anyone taking the time to like be mean to another group? Like it's all so ridiculous. And like in that moment, it's just like, that's like the entire thesis of the movie happening in one absolutely absurd scene.
I
don't know if you guys felt the same way.
Yeah, Mel Brooks is acutely aware of image, and before we move on, I just have to make a quick correction. Duke said Robert De Niro. That's ridiculous.
I was gonna let it slide.
You can't let it slide because
Robert Downey Jr.
I mean, it would be a radically different movie if Robert De Niro was in that movie. He's looking at me.
That would be quite good. Here, I'll just say Robert Downey Jr. And then Raph can just
nope
splice that in.
Nope.
No edits.
Nope. Damage has been done. Duke,
would it be the canon if we don't have to go into the comments on Screen Age Wasteland and
correct
ourselves saying, actually,
Duke, I would argue that mistake was more objectionable than anything that happened in Tropic Thunder or Blazing Saddles.
I agree 100%. Get your shit together. Get it together. Yeah, we could talk about. We could stay on this topic all day. So, I mean, you asked me what the best thing about this movie is, and that's definitely one of the things, that the language, the scenes, the tone.
Mm-hmm.
But I would just love to spend a little bit of time on the chemistry between Wilder and Little, because later Wilder and Pryor will work together, so we'll know what it's not a, oh man, what could have been. They had a great relationship. But, and here comes Hot Take City, as much as I love them as a group, I don't. Is that a Hot Take City bomb?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like an airplane taking off.
It sounds like my brown noise machine I use to sleep. I don't like any movie they were in together at all. I don't like what is it? Stir Crazy? If that's the pinnacle, no, thank you. But I do love them as a comedy duo. Having said that, I love Wilder and Little in this movie together. I love them. I think they work so good. I would love to have seen Wayne and Pryor working together. And it's funny that Pryor was supposed to work in this movie with the Duke. And then in 48 hours, it was not originally Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte. The original plan was Clint Eastwood and Richard Pryor. So he was going to work with the two greatest Western stars. And it didn't happen. And I'm like, man, if I was Richard Pryor, I'd be very mad at my agent. But,
oh man,
yeah,
I don't know if either of those would work, but
well,
would definitely
it's hard. It's hard to say when you see Eddie Murphy just kill it in that movie. It just would have been a different movie with Pryor. And Eastwood.
Man, dude, Sailor, I was gonna add, there's a new sheriff in town to the soundboard, but I ended up foregoing that.
No,
but it would have been great to have after your 48 hours reference.
It would have been great. You had that brown noise machine on standby though. That's great. Wilder. It actually sounds like the score
that's
of every.
That's what everybody in the Barbie theaters heard when Oppenheimer was playing right next to them.
Sounds like the score to every Nolan movie. Wilder's great in this
I think
movie.
It's supposed to be a canon.
Is that what that is?
Oh, that makes sense.
All right.
I think
it just
so.
sounds like
it's not good if you have to explain it to us.
It's the hot take machine.
The canon for the canon for the canon. I get it.
The hot take machine. All right, Sailor. You don't have to get me a canon
sound from a. Oh, no, I got you. I'll get you one.
Oh, a canon sound. I thought you were going to get me an actual canon.
Well, it depends on if you're a cop or not, and if you're cool. I'm not going to say a canon is legal, but I can get you one. Wilder, I love that Wilder downplays it because he's always the wild man in every movie. So the fact that he's playing it relatively straight in this is great. Little isn't wild either, and they're kind of both the straight man in this movie and the way that they bounce off of each other. Because either if it was Pryor and Wilder either would have went way over the top, or Pryor would have went way over the top. One of the two. And I don't think I would have preferred that energy. I like that both of them are kind of letting the movie bounce off of them. They're not the ones that are like, hey, look at me, I'm wild and crazy, and I'm fighting for laughs, which sometimes feels the case in the movies Wilder and Pryor were in together. Nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with a performer wanting laughs, but I kind of sometimes prefer a more low-key, straight man performance. And I think both of them, don't get me wrong, they're both silly. Like, every time you see the Waco kid shooting his guns and it like cuts back and he like his hands are still on this, it's a funny gag. But again, he's not cracking a smile. It's played That's the joke, but he's not playing the joke. Which
Yeah.
you look at the producers before this, and it's a manic performance. He plays like this crazy person who's like hyperventilating all the time. I'm panicking and I'm wet. Like it's great, and I love Wilder, but I really do like him in this movie, and I think it's and on the other side of this, Young Frankenstein, where he's also manic and crazy.
Yeah,
I think this is my favorite of his collaborations with Mel Brooks, and again, I think their chemistry really grounds this movie in a way that it wouldn't have been if it was Pryor. So I'm actually kind of glad that it was Little. I think Little should have had a bigger career based off this movie.
absolutely. But maybe he was a little too black for Hollywood. I do like your point about both of them being sort of like reserved in their performances and like letting the rest of the movie sort of bounce off of them, because they really are like they are playing the straight man role. If we're doing like like comedy archetypes and stuff, and then everyone else around them is like the wild man who's going off the walls and doing all the absurd stuff. So it makes sense to have the two of them in the center of it. Just like their calmness is like where like most like normal people should be, and you look around and you're like, why is everyone being so crazy? Like, why does racism make everyone so weird? Like, why can't they just be chill? Like like Little and Wilder, that's kind of like that's what you get from their performances. So it really does it does add a lot to the movie. Duke, do you have anything else on just like the chemistry between those two? I was also asking you guys before if you thought that this movie like kicked off the sort of interracial buddy, we'll put in parentheses, cop movie and like that whole trope. But yeah, Duke, I was wondering what your thoughts were on their chemistry and everything else with that.
Yeah, I don't know about the interracial the buddy cop genre. Don't know too much about that before it kind of exploded in the 80s. But I mean, chemistry-wise, I think everybody, even beyond Wilder and Little, I think the whole cast just has great chemistry with each other, whether that's Madeline Kahn as Lily Von Schupp or Schupp, whatever, and with Little, they got great chemistry in their one little scene together. And I mean, even Little with Little when he pulls the gun on himself to hush, Harriet, that's a surefire way to get him killed. Oh, you are so good, and they are so dumb. And it's just everybody. I mean, everybody I feel just has at least one, no matter how small the character is, they all have one moment or one scene to really shine, and they all just, it really just gels with the whole cast. Like, we could talk about, what if Pryor played the role, or if the Duke was in this movie and this and that, but really it's hard to imagine, swapping anybody else out. I feel like everybody is just perfectly cast, and just be really.
Yeah,
just,
it would almost feel like anyone else would be like too big for the role and would like command too much, just like with their performance. Or just like if John Wayne were in this movie, just like his presence would be so overwhelming that you would sort of just like miss everything else that's going on.
Yeah, it's the talk of Eon. Every time they cast Bond, they never want to cast somebody who will outshadow or outdo Bond. They want somebody who people will see only as Bond, which is why you're never going to get Cavill or Idris Elba now, because you would not just see them as Bond. It's, you watch this movie and I didn't grow up in the 70s, so it's not like I'm recognizing all these people from the other stuff they did, but like Gene Wilder would be the exception. But Little, to me, I only know him from Blazing Saddles. Madeline Kahn did a few other things I recognize her from, but again, not all the residents of Rock Ridge, barely recognize
all the
them
Johnsons.
on anything else.
But even I think like someone like Wilder, he understood. I'm going to say it. He understood the assignment, right? Like Wilder is a performer who he knew in this movie, where he fit into everything else, where I'm just not sure that that's something that all performers have in terms of knowing when to sort of not shrink, but sort of like take a step back with the role and like let everything else happen around you. I just think it's like both of you guys said, it's just it's a masterclass in terms of what both of them were able to do. Okay, if you guys are cool with this, I think I want to move on to another question, unless Sailor, as our resident sort of like movie historian with an insane encyclopedic level knowledge of like everything that's ever happened in movie history, do you have any thoughts on where the chemistry and the relationship between Little and Wilder, where it fits into the interracial buddy movie that sort of blew up in the 80s and 90s, and I guess 80s and 90s, and it ends with Rush Hour, that whole era?
I like that you put a cap on it with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. You're like, it ain't getting any better than this. This is the pinnacle, y'all.
It ended with Rush Hour too. After that, we were like, no more of these movies.
That is a fair assessment. I have never considered this a buddy cop movie, even though, I mean, I don't know why it wouldn't classify. To me, it has always begun with 48 Hours, and then Lethal Weapon from that exploded it all. But yeah, you can make the case. You can definitely make the case for this being the first interracial buddy cop comedy. I'm fine with that. Hey, Blazing Saddles, another medal to put on that chest of yours. Got all the awards for you.
We're asking the question, what makes Blazing Saddles an essential movie? I think that's one of the things that we can put in its favor, that it sort of, in a weird way, kicked off this obsession with, two folks from different racial backgrounds getting together to sort of solve a common case, we'll say.
It's funny that you say that.
Die Hard with a Vengeance is also peak of that genre.
Well, to me, if we're going to bring up buddy cop movies, we have to talk about the GOAT, which is Collision Course with Jay Leno and Pat Morita.
This is what I meant by your weird encyclopedic level knowledge of movie history, because who the hell knows what you're talking about? And you're like, this is the best one.
Y'all don't know about that masterpiece?
Sailor mentioned Jay Leno, and then my mind immediately went to Taxi with Jimmy Fallon and Queen Latifah. I don't even know if that qualifies.
It has to
that
qualify.
Movie popped in.
Yeah, it definitely qualifies.
It's funny that's a remake, and that's like a 6-film series. They really stretched the fact that, a cop doesn't have a driver's license and it needs to use a taxi to get to crimes. They milked that for all it's worth. For whatever country
it's a funny
that
concept.
comes from. I think it's French or some shit. I think Jean Reno is the taxi driver in that. I'm not as well versed.
Again, how do you know this?
Well, it's hard for me to keep up with everything when I'm just constantly rewatching Collision Course with Jay Leno and Pat Morita.
Collision Course. I gotta Google this now.
No, you really don't.
All right,
you really don't.
Not 1989. Oh yeah. Oh, Pat Morita. Oh, this actually looks kind of interesting.
Oh, did I have to say
the other big
Mr.
question?
Miyagi for you to know who the hell that was, Duke? I did. Don't even answer. I know you don't know.
Too many actors.
Yeah, all right.
From Karate Kid.
The other big question that I wanted to ask you guys, about this movie, and sort of just like thinking about it in a historical sort of context, is the last big question that I wanted to ask you guys in terms of like talking about this movie in like a historical sort of context, is the question of why Mel Brooks chose a Western, why he chose to parody a Western, why he chose Western as like the backdrop for a satire about race relations and all that stuff in like 1970s America. I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts about like why that specific genre works so well for this particular kind of parody. And Duke, I will kick it to you first for this one, because I know you're a big Western guy.
Oh yeah, big Western. No, I don't like Westerns that much.
It's so Canadian of you.
Yeah, give us a good
Every
hockey
time
film,
you,
I guess,
all I'm
which
going
I
to
also
say is
don't
every
watch.
time you kick the ball to him, he fumbles it immediately.
I know. Raph always says a question, kicks to Sailor, and I'm like, oh damn, I wish I would have got that one. It's like being called on. It's like being called on at school, and you wish you got the question right before you, instead of the one the teacher asks.
I'm always throwing the wrong question to the wrong person first.
The only thing I can think of before, I'll say my answer, and then you'll say, and then anyone else, and then Sailor will jump in, and you'll be like, yes, Sailor, that was the correct answer. Is that I really feel like it's the only thing I can give was that Americans and Westerns just go hand in hand. As someone who's from Canada, you would attribute, if you had to pick a genre that Americans liked, or at least used to, it would be the Western. So what better way than maybe to call attention to, I don't know, race relations in America than with the genre that everybody loves. I mean, of course, Westerns are extremely stereotypical in my mind. A lot of them, they're a lot of cliches, stands-offs, all that. So there's a lot, I think, to poke fun of, as we see with Bart, holding himself at gunpoint, and you have all these, the gunmen, and instead of the the gang, I'll call them the gang of outlaws, you have you got the KKK, you got all these different groups of people, and even the hangman, they're parodying the getting hung with I think they hang a horse in the movie, which is absurd. So it's just
such
an absurd joke. Look at maybe the genre that Americans had grown to love, and just kind of turning it on its head. I mean, the idea of a black sheriff itself is kind of another way to look, because I don't think, unless Sailor will jump in and name probably 5 movies before this that had black sheriffs, but I think a black sheriff is kind of, I mean, that's the whole point of, they're giving him a black sheriff so that they'll either kill him or they'll all leave in anger. So okay, Sailor, give me the right answer now.
So the only thing I would add to it is, I think Mel Brooks just likes Westerns. I think America at that time was a great melting pot. Like he said, you have white people, black people, the Irish immigrants, you have the Chinese that are working on the railroads. Like, you have a lot of things that you can point at and make fun of. I think Western allows you to poke at and examine all the different stereotypes, cliches, and tropes of that genre. So that gives you, again, fertile ground to lay a lot of comedy. And if you are going to make points, it's great to have distance, because it's about America. It's the jokes they're making are about America today, but it's easier to make points when you're not confronting people with their day to day. They can look at it with some distance and go, "Oh, aren't these people silly?" Even though it's a mirror reflecting back to them. So
yeah, that's a great point.
That's really all I had to add. Duke really
ditto.
Ditto.
Very well said, Duke.
You did it, Duke.
you did it.
That was a Blazing Saddles reference. I hope we got that.
Oh shit. Well,
now
we're the assholes.
Yeah.
Should have had to add ditto to the board. The soundboard.
I'm really checking my bingo scorecard is slip in the clean jokes. I'm 2 away from a bingo.
With all the clean jokes.
I got another good one. Something. What is it? Harvey Korman says to Madeline Kahn, what is it? It's like, "Oh, just let me have a quick squeeze" or something. He tries to grab her breast. What is that? Right before she tries to seduce the sheriff.
That's not a very clean joke. It's just not
That's a clean
racist.
joke to you?
Right. Well, I'm trying not clean. By clean, I mean I can say it. There's no
I get what you're saying.
racist words for
Yeah.
certain races. That's what I mean.
Well, it would have been clean
Just a
if
bit
she
of
was holding
misogyny.
melons or something. Yeah, a little bit of misogyny.
Yeah.
And sexism.
No
Yeah, if she
racism,
was
just a bit
holding
of
some
sexism.
giant melons, and he's like, "Let me get a taste of those melons." Then yeah, that'd be a clean joke. But he just wants to grab it. He's being a perv, Duke. He's being a perv.
I don't know where he's being a perv.
As he's wont to do. I mean, he's great at being a perv.
Okay.
God bless our.
I think both of you guys made great points. But I also think an interesting thing about using Westerns, and Duke, I feel like you kind of touched on this a little bit, is that like Westerns are so inherently Americana. Like when you think of like the great American film genre, it is Westerns. Like the whole like the industry and the sort of like not mythos, but like I feel like the movie industry as it exists in America, like it exists on a grand stage in our minds, like because of Westerns. Like it's so like they're so deeply ingrained in American culture, and unfortunately racism is so deeply ingrained in American culture, and like racism is like inherently a big part of Western genre culture. The whole like notion of like growing up and kids playing cowboys and, you know, the I word, like that was like a thing that like American kids did growing up because of Western movies, and they taught us that like that is how that's how it went back in the day. Like the good guy cowboys, they would fight against these other guys, and there was just like a racist undertone of all of that, and then like on top of that, because the movie isn't about the relationship between those two groups, you just had like Black history was like totally erased from American history through the Western genre. So like in order to take a look at racism in America through the lens of this genre, by just like literally like all Mel Brooks does is he's like, hey, what if we put one Black person into a Western movie and like see what happens? And that's Blazing Saddles. And it ends up being hilarious, but it's like such a simple choice, and it's like the obvious choice, but it does work so well because of the history that at that time, and just like even now, like movie viewers and movie audiences have, like the history that we bring and the understanding that we bring of what the genre means. It just elevates like the entire point that Mel Brooks is making in the movie. That's my 2 cents on the idea of it being a Western. But then you also get to do like, because he is such a fan of Westerns, you get to do like the jokes about all the tropes, you know, with the fastest hand in the West. And whenever Wilder's doing it, you don't even see his hands move, you know, like you get to do that stuff too. Which is just, it's all wonderful.
Ditto.
I got that reference. You know, one of the things I was going to put on the soundboard is, now this is just turning into an episode of me describing all the things I once wanted to put on the soundboard but never did. One of them was that quote from, what is that, Avengers, where Captain America says, I got that reference. Yeah. But I got that character, and I think that line is...
You don't like Captain America?
Whoa. Add the Canon sound effect. We're going into Hot Take City. What?
Hot take, I don't really love the character of Captain America.
Oh, man.
Oof.
Okay.
We should
save it for the Winter Soldier podcast.
There's some additional pieces of trivia that I found kind of interesting about this movie. I think we talked about some of the big ones. I actually, in all my research, Sailor, I never... actually, no, I did know that John Wayne was approached about being in the movie, but I didn't know that he actually ever like considered it. We talked about the Richard Pryor bit. We didn't talk about Gene Wilder originally being approached and then not wanting to do it. And there was another fella who was cast in the role as the Waco Kid, and he was so drunk the first day of filming that that scene in the jailhouse that Mel Brooks called Gene Wilder and like begged him to come be in the movie, and the next day Wilder got in a plane and went to the set, which is
that sounds familiar, but yeah, I guess I forgot that. Have they said who that actor was?
yeah. I didn't write down the person's
shit.
name, but
Well,
yeah,
while we're going through our picks, I'll look up.
I think this is also great for like what we're doing here in the canon and talking about how this movie is so essential. But apparently, when it was originally screened for the studio execs, none of them found it funny. Nobody laughed, and they were like, "We're not going to release this movie." And then Mel Brooks fought to have it screened in front of like regular employees at the studio, and they all thought it was hilarious, so that's how they ended up releasing it. But it's weird to think that we almost didn't have this movie because studio execs have apparently always been the dumbest people in the world and don't have good taste.
They really don't.
Okay. I got Gig Young.
Oh, Duke got there right when I did.
Dookie. Does anyone call you Dookie?
No, because they do
No,
not.
it's going to be a thing now.
I think Sailor calls me Dookie sometimes, just in Slack.
You know, if it fits, it fits.
If it fits, it fits.
In honor of Gig Young losing the role, one of my recommendations might be in honor of him. How about that?
Okay.
All right, I like
Keep that in your back pocket. We're almost at recommendation time. I feel like we've had a great conversation. This has been a lovely way to kick off season 2 of the canon. I've laughed my butt off with you two. Not only just thinking about the movie, but the conversation that the three of us have been able to have. I feel like it's been super fun. It's been super informative. I think we've gotten to the bottom of some really cool stuff about this movie. I don't know if you guys feel sort of the same way, but maybe to wrap things up for final thoughts, maybe let's try to each give a sort of concise answer about why we think that this movie belongs in the canon. And Duke, I'll throw it to you first. I feel like this isn't a question that you can get wrong.
Hope not. When I considered way back when we picked all these films for the canon, I really looked at films that, were just kind of, in my opinion, great, minimal flaws. And if there were flaws, you were able to overlook them. Great casting, storytelling, kind of that once in a lifetime film that other films will then try to replicate or pay homage to throughout the decades. And, as I've previously mentioned earlier in this episode, Blazing Saddles just has the casting down. The jokes just keep on delivering. I always think that you have a really good comedy film if when you keep saying all the lines and you making references to everything, and then when you watch the film later, the jokes aren't as funny as you remember them because you've been saying them so much in real life, and then you just, when you have a bit with somebody, the joke just gets more exaggerated and funnier and funnier. So when you go back to the original, you're almost like, oh, is it really that tame? Is it really that mild? So just seeing, something that it's instantly quotable. It's, a wet woes, how romantic. There's just these lines that are so simple. But if someone else has seen the movie, if you hand somebody a rose and you say that line, they're going to get it. They're going to think it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those films that, you just need to watch. You need to see that, as we've said, like, people need to laugh. People need to just not be so serious and think it's a film that really should be, you can't watch this film and think it's trying to divide people. It's trying to bring people together. And I think that's what we really need more of in this world. And there's nothing brings people together better than when you're sitting in a room laughing and just having a jolly good time. So, yeah.
That was beautiful. That was really
Thank
beautiful. You I think you summed it up very well. Thanks for that, Duke. Sailor, is there any way in the world that you can top that?
Yeah, try to top that.
Well, if I was adhering to the rules of 3 in comedy, I would just say ditto. But I ain't no hacky comedian. Even though I was very tempted to do it. When we talk about greatness, which is a subjective term, we break it down by, well, at least I do, by what did it do for cinema? Yeah, we can talk about how funny this movie is, but funny is also subjective. Like, there are people who probably watch this movie stone-faced because they don't connect to the humor, and that's perfectly valid. If you do not find this movie funny, like, I'm not the biggest fan of Spaceballs. I think it's fun, but for someone else, that might be their favorite Mel Brooks comedy. So comedy is subjective. So what does it mean to be great? And to me, one of the defining characteristics of greatness is influence and importance. How many branches of the tree are there that have sprouted from this movie? And that is incalculable. How many movies were directly inspired and influenced by this movie? Like, there's no way to say what its reach was and how we can still feel it. Whether or not, even the movies that are inspired by the things that were inspired by it may not even know the origin of their influence. So to me, when we talk about what is essential for the canon, I think what we need to be asking is, what are the movies that have shaped not just cinema, but pop culture as a whole? And to me, there is no question that Blazing Saddles is one of the essential titles. Period.
That was also beautiful. You guys are really, you brought the heat. You really brought the heat. You guys brought the boom.
I knew you were doing it.
Shit, I just choked. No, but seriously, that was you guys both really did bring the heat with those answers. I wholeheartedly believe with everything that both of you guys said. So I'm not even going to try to add on to it in any way, shape, or form. I think we had a great discussion. I think we definitely answered the question of why this movie is essential. And I think now we can move on to recommendations. If you sat down and you watch Blazing Saddles either for the first time or on a rewatch, and you're like, damn, I really like that. What else should I check out? Well, now we're going to give you some things to check out. Let's do recommendations. We all have our 3. Duke hopefully won't go over. Listener, if you're new to the proceedings here,
not this time.
Duke is
new season,
a notorious abuser of our recommendations rule. We have a strict 3 recommendation limit. Duke likes to recommend 4, 5, 6 things. It's absolutely out of control. Absolutely. I think we can get into it. We will. Let's go Sailor, Duke, Raph. So in a late episode in season 1, just between the 3 of us, Bob, who's another Screen Age Wasteland contributor, Bob flipped the script on us and he told me to go first, and it totally threw off the vibe of the recommendation section. So I don't know if we ever want to do that again, but it was an interesting exercise. All that aside,
I like how you go just between the 3 of us, and then you go Bob, and then you explain who Bob is as if it's not just between the 3 of us. First I thought, I'm going to cut it sounded like you were going to cut this part you were telling us, but then you explained who Bob is as either for idiots or you're going to keep it in the pod for everybody.
People need to know who Bob is.
Yeah.
He's the one who killed Laura Palmer. All right, my first recommendation up is I always try to give you. That is what it is. You're here for the Sailor recommendations and the weird asides, but I'm keeping this one on brand because usually my recommendations are a little bit weird. But this is also a Western comedy, and I think it lives in the shadow of Blazing Saddles Shadows, Blazing Saddles, but I don't think you should. I caught myself, you sons of bitches. I caught myself, Robert De Niro over here. So my first one I'm going with is the 1985 movie Rustler's Rhapsody, which is also a parody, but in a different way, because Blazing Saddles, as we just broke down for the last 17 hours, is what it is. This is more taking aim at the singing cowboy tropes. So I will read the IMDb plot synopsis for you right now. The Wild West goes wacko when the greatest fast-drawing, fancy-dressing, silver-spurred, guitar-playing, singing cowboy movie matinee idol Rex O'Hurlahan hits the saddle in this cockeyed, affectionate send-up of the 40s B-movie Western. Basically, Tom Berenger plays a Tex Ritter-type character, wears all white, goes into this town, and he immediately talks to this drunk, played by G.W. Bailey, and he explains everything about the town. He's like, that's the school teacher with a heart of gold who looks after the kids who I'm probably going to fall in love with. There's the corrupt sheriff. And he breaks down all the tropes, and he's like, and he's talking to this drunk, and he's like, but does every town have a drunk? And he's like, and he wanted to tell him the truth, but he's like, no, you're unique to this. And he's like, all right. It's not that he's walking into a movie, because the way I'm describing it sounds like he walked into a movie, like a Last Action Hero type.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's just he's a wandering singing cowboy, and he's seen, like every wandering singing cowboy, the tropes, and he can recognize them. And there's another cowboy that comes into town that may be so good that it makes our hero maybe be the villain, who's so good that he never hurts anybody when he shoots them. He shoots the guns out of their hands, and there's like a funny bit where he's practicing by shooting these cardboard standees, like just shooting the guns, because he never shoots anybody. It's a wacky movie. It's funny, and if you love Westerns, it is a great send-up of the Western genre. So, Rustler's Rhapsody from 1985. And Tom Berenger's really funny in it, which is rare for him, because he's usually always serious. So, Rustler's Rhapsody.
Good first pick. We definitely an expected sailor pick. Something pretty wacky, something I'm sure a lot of people have not heard of, but I'm sure it's worthwhile to check out. So, good first pick. Duke, over to you.
All right. I know earlier we said that Blazing Saddles was a movie that couldn't be made today, but it could be remade today. That's right. My first pick is Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank, which is an animated film that is a loose remake of Blazing Saddles.
Nice.
It came out last year.
Nice. It's awful.
It's terrible. And let me put the disclaimer that I only recommend watching this after you've seen Blazing Saddles.
There it is. Correct. Not even my beloved.
Whoa! Let me finish.
All right, no. Keep going. Tell us. Explain yourself.
You should only watch this if you've seen Blazing Saddles, because I think the joy of watching Paws of Fury is seeing what they pull from the original and how it's different. And for instance, Paws of Fury, they're all animals, you know. It's like Disney's Robin Hood. They're all animals.
Because
and it was originally called Blazing Samurai, but then they changed it to that stupid title. And so it's like a samurai instead of a Western. It's kind of very loosely parodying samurai films. But Mel Brooks was an executive producer, and he kind of worked on the screenplay. Maybe he got a screenplay credit, I think. But he voices one of the characters. And Michael Cera, who Sailor loves, plays Hank, who is the Sheriff Bart character. Yeah, and Samuel L. Jackson voices like a sensei, who is like Jim the Waco Kid. And Ricky Gervais is in it, Mel Brooks, George Takei. There's a lot. It's a good voice cast, and really, it's just fun to see kind of it's like a kid's version of Blazing Saddles. So it's kind of fun to watch just for that, to see how they kind of dumb it down and change some stuff and work in the animation as an art form instead of live action. So yeah, it's not good, but it's worth the time if you like Blazing Saddles and seeing and comparing remakes with the original. So yeah,
interesting pick.
That's all I gotta say about that. Yeah,
thanks, Duke. Thanks for that.
If you've listened to Blazing Saddles, this podcast, and you're not going to watch the movie, don't watch Paws of Fury. That's what you get from this.
Why would you
if you're listening,
someone not watch this?
But if you like Blazing Saddles, watch it. But if you haven't seen Blazing Saddles and you're somehow listening to this podcast, then don't watch Paws of Fury. Only watch Paws of Fury if you've seen Blazing Saddles.
If you're in a hospital bed recovering and you're like in a lot of pain, and that's the only thing on TV, I still wouldn't recommend it. So on to your pick, Raph.
Okay, my first recommendation is I'm gonna go with another text that is about someone putting someone in charge of something, but really wanting the whole thing to fail and crumble under said person who they put in charge. Right, the whole premise of Blazing Saddles, which we haven't really gone over, is that the Attorney General Hedley Lamar puts Headley puts Cleon Little's character in place. Bart puts him in place as the sheriff because he wants to run his railroad through the town of Rock Ridge, and he thinks by putting a black sheriff in power there that everyone will run out of town or murder each other or something bad will happen. It'll all fail and he'll be able to build his railroad. So I wanted to recommend something else where someone is like, I need something to fail, so I'm going to put in someone who I believe to be a dope to be in charge of said thing. I'm going with, for my first recommendation, Ted Lasso, the TV show.
Ooh.
I like it.
Sort of follows a similar plan, right? And then everyone realizes, like, wait, actually, this person, not so bad, huh? Not so bad. Kind of like this Ted Lasso guy. So, a weird similarity, but still, I
like that.
An interesting kind of connection between those two things. So, yeah.
I don't hate that.
Sailor, with that, I will send it back your way.
It's a movie that has probably the most controversial title of all time, so I can't even say it. But it has been shortened so white people like me can say it. So I'm going to recommend the movie Boss from 1974. You could probably guess what the word after that word, title is. So if you want to Google Boss from 1974 with Fred Williamson, then you can see why I can't say that on a podcast. But the reason why it's called that is Fred Williamson, along with I want to pronounce his name correctly, so I gotta look at it before I say it.
Derville Martin.
God damn it. Thank you. I can't. The dude from fucking Dolomite. I can never say his name right. They roll into town. They take over the town. They become sheriff and deputy, and they immediately outlaw that word. So every time somebody says it, they get a fine. Boss blank. They ain't outlawing the word boss.
It's the other one that they're outlawing.
It's the other one. This is the one I'm not saying. It's the one that rhymes with
you don't have to say. We all know.
But the reason it's called it is because that is a plot.
I can hear you sweating trying to get around the word.
I'm sweating so hard because I do,
and it's not the Arizona heat.
That's nothing new for Sailor sweating though.
That is true. This is very rare for me because when I bought it on Blu-ray, it comes with a reversible, and I was like, no, I'm putting it on Front Street. Fred Williamson named it this, and I'm going to call it this because that's what he. Yeah, bullshit. Putting my feet to the fire. I can't. I'm sorry, Fred. But yeah, they just roll into town, outlaw that word, and let's just say a lot of people end up with fines. White people ain't a fan of this, and so maybe Fred Williamson has to give him some black justice. Boss, 1974. Not a comedy, but I think it is also playing with some of the things that we have talked about with Blazing Saddles. If Blazing Saddles was a straight movie with no comedy and was a more pointed with what it wanted to say, maybe it could look a lot like Boss. 1974. Great movie. Unlike Duke's Pick, this is one I actually stand behind. This is a great movie. It just has a title I can't say. In good company. The
Wikipedia also listed it as The Black Bounty Hunter as an alternate title.
Yeah, you can call it that.
Well, people do because it's an alternate title.
All right, Duke. Let's you got to redeem yourself.
Here's something no one should have any qualms about. I'm doing a Mel Brooks pick. I'm doing my introduction to Mel Brooks, which would be Get Smart, the acclaimed 1960s spy parody television series starring Don Adams.
Much better. We like this pick.
Absolutely great television. I could talk about it, but I feel like most people would have seen some of it. I'd even recommend the 2008 remake. It's not perfect, but there is some good stuff to it as well. But the original series. I don't mind the remake. It's not bad either.
Yeah, of course. For somebody
but
who
no, the original is great. The original is great, and you just can't go wrong with it. 5 seasons, 138 episodes. What more can I say?
It's really one of the best James Bond parodies, and there's many James Bond parodies. This is probably the best.
Yeah.
One.
Nice. Good second pick, Duke.
Thank you.
We approve. Everyone liked that. Everyone liked that pick. Well done.
Technically, that is multiple picks. It's 5 seasons, so he's cheating again. Look at him.
Yeah, you kind of threw in a 2-for-1 there, but that's okay.
Last season, Raph wants someone to pick a recipe, and a recipe has about 30 steps. So, Sailor, I don't really know what the difference is there.
No, Duke, you're good. We fully accepted. You got the cheer and everything. All right, for my second pick, I'm gonna go with another movie, kind of similar to Sailor's pick. Another movie that is using the Western to look at and think about race relations in America. I'm gonna go with a more recent film. I think most people have seen it. I still really dig it. There are definitely things about this movie that can be picked apart and critiqued, but I think for the most part, it's just a really freaking fun time. I'm, of course, recommending Django Unchained.
Unchained.
I still think it's a ton of fun.
Not that white Django.
Yeah. The real Django. Yeah, man, just a really fun movie, a really fun Western. I think in a lot of ways, either consciously or unconsciously, it's pulling from Blazing Saddles and playing with, a similar conversation. So definitely a movie to check out if you dig Blazing Saddles.
And to further your point on the connection between the two movies, my boss back in the day when I worked at Pizza Hut is a black man.
Just your boss?
Oh my god.
Or your boss?
Well, he was a black man, so I'll leave that too. But he was a black man. I am a white man, if you couldn't tell with my voice. You racist sons of bitches, if you said yes. We would quote the KKK scene. Well, I guess they're not technically the KKK, but I guess they are the regulators. We would quote that scene. No, we didn't bring any extra bags. well, shit, I can't see out of mine. Like, we would quote that entire thing, and we had no problem saying that word to each other. And I'm like, this is the bridge that connects people, right? We're only excluding each other when we think we're excluding each other. And Django Unchained brings everyone. I saw that shit in the theaters on Christmas. Whole bunch of black people behind me. I'm in the middle, and all I kept hearing is, "Get him, Django! Kill that white son of a bitch!" And I was like, "Uh-oh.
Hell yeah.
Y'all need to calm down, man. Y'all need to calm. I'm with y'all, but y'all need to calm down.
Not all the white sons of bitches. Like, definitely not the white son of a bitch in seat E7.
Just sweating. I'm like, just mousy. Like, we're not out, man. That was all right.
What's going on for real?
All right, Sailor, what's your next pick?
And if Duke picks the movie Django shows up in that isn't Django Unchained, I'm going to reach through this computer and strangle him.
I haven't actually watched that. I haven't watched A Million Ways to Die in the West. So
it's awful. And it's a fun cameo, but no. Because that would also tie this all together, but no, because he does say, "Where the white men at?" Don't do it. I'm watching you, son.
Hey, where are the white women at?
There you go. That's all you need. Well, in honor of...
All right, Sailor, what's your last pick?
In honor of Gig Young, who was the Waco kid, like we said, who got cut out of the movie, I am picking a Gig Young movie that sounds like a Western, but is not. It is called They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Not a Western. It is about a group of dancers in the Great Depression that were not forced, it is a competition to dance until the last person standing. And if you've never heard of this, is based on a true event. Back in the Great Depression, you would go into this great dance hall with an audience, and people would go in day after day and then watch you dance. You would dance for an hour or 2 hours or whatever it was, get 15-minute break, and then dance some more. Nonstop. And people
I've heard good things about that movie.
It is crazy that people did this, but it's the Great Depression. They had nothing. They had a roof over their house because they couldn't leave the studio. Like, they would literally sleep in a bed in the middle of the ring. And then when the crowds would come in, they'd be forced to wake up and then dance some more. And it's crazy. Not only is the competition crazy, it's like any sports movie. You don't know who's going to win. So there's a bit of like, what is it? Like any sports movie, stakes. You're rooting for. You're going in picking somebody and you're hoping they're going to win. And if people fall out, you see the ramifications of like, oh, now what do we do? Because this has been, again, I cannot stress this enough. They're dancing nonstop for months. This isn't for days or some shit. This is months and months. In real life, I think the longest somebody danced was 1,800 minutes. Or no, 1,800 hours. I'm sorry, 1,800 hours nonstop.
Jesus.
And then, like, if you lost that, if you were like number 2 behind that, what do you do then? Like, how do you go back to life after that? So it's a great Peter Bogdanovich movie. The cast is great. Jane Fonda is great.
It's like that episode of Always Sunny.
It is exactly like that episode of It's Always Sunny. Bringing it all full circle.
All things come back to It's Always Sunny.
They tend to do it. They shoot horses, don't they? Do not be put off by.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it's called that, but y'all have to watch the movie to find out. So that's my pick.
We'll check it out.
Loose connection to Blazing Saddles.
Very loose, but we like it. Senor Dookie.
No.
That sounded bad.
No, that's all right.
Raphael. The
Sir,
least favorite
what's your last
Teenage
pick?
Mutant Ninja Turtle.
Oh, how could you? That was named after him.
God, I hope not.
Jesus.
Why not? Raphael's the best Ninja Turtle.
I don't even know what color that one is. Is that the purple
The red
one?
one.
That's the red one.
Oh, I like.
Donatello's the purple one.
Oh,
He's the worst.
I like the orange one.
Well, yeah, everyone loves Mikey.
Because you're a basic bitch.
Jesus.
Mine's
All right,
my favorite
pick,
is the
man?
purple one because he had a stick, so he was the best at playing the arcade.
I actually like the
No
girl,
respect.
April
Hashtag
O'Neil.
respect for Donatello.
Hashtag
The most useless,
April O'Neil.
but best.
Ginger love. There we go. Ginger
Nobody loves
representation.
gingers. All right, give us your pick, dude.
Oh, there we go. Well, my last pick, I'm surprised no one ever brought it up when we were talking about Blazing Saddles. I'm going to go for the TV pilot, Black Bart.
Oh.
Yes, for those who were not
shit that connects to this. It's awful. Damn it, Duke. Just take
I think you got to watch it to really see how great Blazing Saddles is and see how terrible it could have been when you take away the genius that is Mel Brooks.
I mean,
No, that's a good point.
I tried watching some of it today, and it's just not funny. It's painfully unfunny.
So two
And
of your recommendations are unfunny garbage. Great, Duke. You killed it. You crushed it again. What did you go?
Hey, Paws of Fury has some good stuff.
Duke, I get why you're recommending these things. They're important within the history of Blazing Saddles.
Thank you, Raph. I take back the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle joke now. That is so nice.
That's okay. It's all love, brother.
And a fun thing when I Googled this, after I read something where someone said that Warner Brothers actually shot 24 episodes of this, but only the pilot's ever been shown. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's interesting that they could. Well, probably not. I bet Warner Brothers burned it during their Great Purge, but there might have been more episodes of this that have never seen the light of day. But Black Bart, nobody comes back. They recast Sheriff Little, and then they kind of make a proxy Waco Kid character. So yeah, but it's if you own the 30th anniversary DVD or Blu-ray, it's a special feature on that. So
or 40th.
Is it on the 40th too? I didn't check.
Yeah.
I was going to. I own the 40th, but I didn't check.
I don't, but I saw it. I saw that online.
Well, there we go. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in high definition. Maybe they were too lazy to give it a rescan. Who knows?
I'm sure they didn't do any sort of restoration.
But it's also on YouTube. It's also on YouTube.
Yeah, but it is cool. It is cool to have and to see and to just to know about it.
I agree. It's all part of that history.
Well, I'm going to give them a little bit of it's more than just being laziness. They would have to find the original camera negative for a pilot of a show no one gave a shit about. They can't just take the footage they have and scale it. They need that footage, and would you put in the effort for that, Duke? Would anyone? No. So don't call them lazy. It's why expend the effort? Because it probably doesn't even exist. That's why we'll never get Blu-ray up-sized versions of like the first 20 seasons of Doctor Who. They just don't exist. You get what you get.
You get what you get.
We don't get what? Blu-ray versions of the first 20 seasons of Doctor Who?
No, the first the 5 seasons of that show are just gone. Completely. And then before that, the camera negatives for a couple seasons after that are gone.
This is the most random tangent we've ever been down officially.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do this. I said it and I dropped it, and then Duke picked it back up, so I had to elaborate.
Yeah. No.
I got confused why you're just bringing up Doctor Who for some reason.
I could have never guessed in a trillion years, which is why I love having both of you guys on the show. I would have never guessed that our Blazing Saddles discussion would lead us to the fact that you can't find the first 5 seasons of Doctor Who anywhere. It's never something I could have guessed, and it's amazing. I love it. So for my last recommendation, I had a few things in mind. Some of them we kind of talked about, so I don't really want to do those. Another one is kind of essentially just the same pick as Ted Lasso, and something that we didn't talk about, which I think is super important that we do mention before we wrap up this episode. But I think part of what makes Blazing Saddles so special is the fact that there is a scene where a bunch of guys are eating a bunch of beans and fart uncontrollably. Like, I am a sucker for easy lowbrow toilet humor. Like, a fart on screen will always make me laugh. I'm just a very simple person to please in that regard. So I'm going to go with another one of my favorite cinematic farts. A movie that I don't believe is in the canon, but I wholeheartedly believe that it should be. I'm going with Step Brothers because that is one of the most iconic movie farts of all time. And I think it's right up there with the Blazing Saddles fart scene, which is also one of the best of all time. You guys aren't big fart guys?
I'm not a big fart guy in cinema, no, and also I can't even remember what that fart scene is in Step Brothers.
Well, I remember both of the scenes, but it's funny that that's the thing that you point out. And I didn't mention it at all because it's my least favorite bit in Blazing Saddles.
Oh, that's terrible in Blazing Saddles. Extremely unfun. Especially because if you really pay attention, the farting audio doesn't actually sync up with everybody standing up, so it's just sloppy.
That doesn't matter. It's
sloppy. Sloppy like them beans.
I mean, me and Duke are probably in the minority.
Beans and farts are funny.
Raff. If you haven't learned anything, it's when Duke and Sailor actually agree on something, it's just fact. So the fact that we both think that scene is the worst part of the movie, it's just 100% factual.
You guys and your highbrow humor, your ditto jokes and whatnot. Let a man fart. Let a man laugh about some farts.
Oh, it's like when I hear a fart joke in a movie, I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was watching a freaking kids movie. Didn't know I was watching a DreamWorks. Didn't know I was watching a DreamWorks movie.
It's why I love South Park.
South Park has way better bits than fart jokes.
Yeah, but some of the funniest South Park moments are tied around farts and poop jokes. Poops and farts are funny.
Oh,
poopy farts, farty poops.
No, you're cutting all of this, but no, you're not. Keep it in. You
guys. Cut this and save yourself, Raph. Save yourself from ridicule. It's not.
We're from ridicule.
Not good. Raph, let me just tell you, Raph, when you have kids, you're going to be the best dad because, I mean, you guys will be watching all those fart joke movies and you'll both be laughing. So,
dude, farts are funny. I don't know why you guys think that you're above farts. Like, it's too...
We were touching
this
level of humor.
Farts can be funny. It's just the Blazing Saddles fart joke. It's just so overdone. It was probably overdone before that. It's been overdone.
You guys up on your soapbox. I'm here for the social satire. I just want to hear about why racism and sexism are so bad. Let me laugh at some farts. Come on, man. You guys are ridiculous.
The best part about that scene is when there's...
And then hearing farts, that is funny.
No.
That will always be funny.
No.
See here, I'm not fighting against it as hard as Duke, because I do recognize that we're in the minority. Many people, I've seen it on many lists of the funniest movie scenes. I just, like Duke, I have never found fart humor funny, even as a kid. I was like, yeah, I get it, farts. Like, but I'm glad it's in it because Mel Brooks isn't afraid to go lowbrow on top of highbrow. That's the great dichotomy of the two things. And like Monty Python, they are probably the smartest academic, scholarly type comedians. Like some of their jokes you actually have to read a book to get. But then they'll have like the Mr. Creosote scene, which is literally a guy getting so fat he explodes. You know what I mean? So I like that. I have no problem with it being in the movie. I just find it. I actually prefer the fart scene in Step Brothers more. Or when he plays Moby Dick for real.
I mean, that's an absolutely wonderful movie that we could spend another 3 hours talking about.
Is that in the canon? But because I'll take back everything I said about influence and impact to put that in the canon.
It's not in the canon. That's why I recommended it. All right. Sorry, listener, that you had to hear me and Duke get into a little...
I also don't think Step Brothers is that funny, but let's not get into that.
a little tiff about fart humor. Let's do a recap of our recommendations. We'll go same order. Sailor, what do you got?
Am I just going through all three?
Yeah, all three. Boom, boom, boom.
Okay.
That's
Wrestler's
literally what he just
Rhapsody
said.
from 1985. Well, I thought we might be bouncing back and forth. Shut up, Duke. Wrestler's Rhapsody 1985. Boss 1974. And Shoot Horses Don't They 1969. Those are my picks.
My three were The Paws of Fury, Legend of Hank, Get Smart, the 1960s original series, and Black Bart, the TV pilot spinoff of Blazing Saddles.
I've got Ted Lasso, Django Unchained, and Step Brothers.
Those are good picks.
Okay.
I like Ted Lasso. That's a good one.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I like how you drew the comparison. I didn't say that when you were actually talking about it, but it is similar.
Oh, thank you.
Fish out of water, kind of. Fish out of water.
When
Definitely
you were
fish out of
describing
water.
I thought you were going to pick Idiocracy.
Oh, I've never seen Idiocracy.
Ooh, you'll love it. It's great. It's
but yeah, there was I had another recommendation that was sort of similar to Ted Lasso, but I decided to throw in Step Brothers at the last minute there.
Well, if it makes you feel better, because again, I picked these in the last minute. One of my picks was going to be a cartoon that is a ripoff of Ninja Turtles, so it would have been appropriate. Cowboys of Moo Mesa.
Oh boy.
Nope, you're not allowed to sneak in any extra recommendations.
Oh, I didn't pick it for a reason. Let me be very clear on this. It's not a recommendation. The arcade game is fun, though. So,
Duke, Sailor, thank you guys for joining me for the first episode of season 2. We've got a lot of great stuff planned for this season. Like I said, we're doing a special 2-episode drop today for the first week of season 2 of the Canon. So you've got Blazing Saddles that you're listening to right now. We've also got Dr. Strangelove out right now, so give that a listen. 2 great satires, 2 amazing movies, 2 monumental figures in the history of satire, of cinematic satire. We're happy that both of them are in the Canon. I'm happy that I got to talk to you guys about this one. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did. Thank you for joining. Before we wrap up, any final words, any words of wisdom, anything to promote on the website, or anything else?
stay out of Arizona, you'll die.
Yeah. Stay cool out there.
Stay
classy.
Stay cool. Stay cool out there.
Stay
Stay
cool.
cool.
Stay classy, San Diego.
Stay cool. Stay classy. And
Don't get
also,
murdered. Oh, that's a different podcast.
Don't get murdered.
Yeah, definitely don't get murdered. But
and don't murder.
we are still wondering.
Hey, where are the white women at?